it's what we tell ourselves as well that we have to watch out for and not believe it all the time. You know, if your heart says, I want to do that, I want to start painting, then do it.
Roxanne is a Vogue model, and she's traveled the world extensively, and she's been modeling since she was 3. And that's a lifetime in the industry, if I can say that. And she's an inspiration to me personally, because I might be into photography, might not necessarily be into portraits, but I do follow a lot of portrait photographers. And my feed in general is full of models of a similar age group, a similar body type, if you will, a similar skin color, if you will. And that over the last few years has been changing. And I came across Roxanne's work because I was looking for people who don't necessarily fit in with what you would think of when you think of a model, so to speak, because we have these preconceived notions in our heads, you know. And I think this is something that Roxanne also spoke of in one of her YouTube videos. When you talk about nurses, for instance, you only think of females, you don't think of male nurses. When you think of doctors, it's like the opposite, kind of. And so she's someone who has been working across the years with women of different age groups to also help them with self-empowerment. And that's why, if you don't know who Roxanne is, really go check out her work. Definitely watch her YouTube videos, because for me, that's been an eye-opener in many ways. And just subscribe to what she does, because she is incredible and her work is incredible. And I hope this is also helpful to whoever watches this, wherever you do. And yeah, so if I missed anything, Roxanne, please fill us in, because I'm sure the internet doesn't know everything there is to know. So,
well, maybe I can fill in a little with our discussion.
Yes, sure. I want to talk to you a bit, because you're someone who started off very young and you're still at it. So what's kept you going? Like what keeps you up? It gets you up in the morning and says, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is what I've got to do. What inspires you to do it?
Well, as a young child, I would play dress up and enjoy it. And then as I got older and found out I could get paid to do that, well, what a perfect fit. I've always enjoyed the creative expression that clothes and hair and makeup can allow you. And it's always inspirational. It's forever changing. So I don't find it dull. I find the trends changing and the posing changing. There's always more creation. And being an artist at heart, coming from a long line of artists in my family, it suited me, this whole industry. There's also many tangents you could go on, photography or set design or fashion design, and etc. So I always enjoyed seeing people change and grow. There was a lot of room for personal development and personal expression. So I find that very important. It's not a closed, boxed in kind of industry. There's a lot of creative freedom. So for me, I loved being in the industry and being surrounded by all that creative freedom. I did try the other categories I just mentioned, but I always fell back to modeling. I had experience with dance, so I had a lot of body awareness, and the bone structure, which helped with being photogenic. But also, I didn't have a plan, like I want to model for a certain amount of time for, say, to pay off debt or to save for a down payment for a house or pay for college. Like some models do, and they give themselves a time frame and then they get out. But because this was just so suited for my character, I loved the variety that the industry gives you. You have different locations that you work on, different groups of people that you work with. And everything's different with each job. And so I liked that. Some people prefer to have the knowledge of when they'll work, when they'll have their days off, when their paycheck will arrive. That's not this industry. So again, that suited my character. So I found a lot of inspiration from that challenge of having to go with the flow and seeing what this month would bring and who will I work with now. So that was part of my inspiration to keep going all these years.
Wow, that's incredible. The focus on people and seeing how people have also grown over the years. You've grown in the industry, to put it one way. And as you've grown, have you noticed any changes in maybe age-related issues in the industry itself, or how the industry treats people based on their age?
Yes. Okay, let's say in the 1980s, when I was a young woman, before I had children, before I was married, um, it was a different era. We didn't have digital, so we needed to go to location to get the background that we needed. So there's a lot of jet setting. There was big budgets for photo productions. There weren't as many mandatory rules in place for models. So models were asked to do things that they're not asked to do today. So there's, it was quite different back then. We'd have longer hours to work. That's an example. Today, models are to work the 8 hours and have an hour off for lunch, and to have a designated area to change in privacy. And back then it was just, we'll go on location. Well, you change somewhere on the road. They'll, you work until the job is done. You might have 12-hour days and you work 7 days a week. So that was a different era. And there was a lot more partying going on after the job at night. So that's changed. Well, at least it has for me also. As someone gets older, I won't accept calls, the wake-up calls at like 3 in the morning. Like sometimes there was a job back then, you would be expected to say, yes, okay, I'll be in the studio at 3 a.m. to drive to location to get that sunrise shot. Well, at this age, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to get up at 3 a.m. Fortunately, those kind of jobs don't exist anymore, or, if they do exist, then we make sure that everybody agrees to what's happening. You're just not expected to do it. But that's a difference. The demands on an older model are a bit softer and more respected. It puts the job at risk also if, I'm expected to be awake and on, so to speak, at such an early hour. You put the production at risk that you don't get the picture. I don't wake up as quickly as I did when I was younger. So, I'm not that Ferrari where you just get in the car and you hit the gas and you're gone in a few seconds to 120 miles an hour. It's more like a Rolls Royce. It's built to last, but you have to take care of it. So you start the engine slowly and then you get the job done.
I like the analogy of the Ferrari versus Rolls Royce. That's beautiful. But just out of curiosity, since you said the industry's changed also, there are lots of things that don't happen today that used to because of regulations in place, for the better, of course. Do you think people treat you differently as well? That because you started when you were 3. So of course, during your teenage years maybe, or early 20s, then 30s, and then now, of course. Have you seen people treat you differently because, not just because of the color of your hair or just because of the experience that you have in the industry, but just because of your age?
Yes, I think because I'm older, I get more respect, but that has nothing to do with the industry. Like if you and I were to meet someone in their 90s, we would treat them with respect and a little more gentleness and finesse just because of their age. So yes, I do get that in the industry. And I think it wouldn't matter if I were in the industry or not. I think just, society just says, with an older person, you're a little more respectful. So I do get that. And I also get asked my opinion more. When you're younger, people might ask you a question and not really care about the answer so much. But now I think my words hold more weight, I suppose, because I do have more experience. So that's very nice. That's a benefit of aging.
Yeah, but that's interesting that you say that, because very often we think of models as being people who are directed rather than people who have a say in maybe how the direction of a shoot, or
Exactly.
even so. Would you have a say now more in terms of how the outcome of a shoot, for instance, or how you are also portrayed in that sense?
Yes, absolutely. I will have a say, and if I refuse, they will accept it, whatever it may be. And also with the makeup or my look, if I want to add or subtract something to what they're doing, they immediately do not hesitate and listen to my wish. And that's very nice. I respect them for doing that, for them to respect me. Where as a younger model, they just make you up as they want, and you don't really have much say. So that is a difference, being older and having my opinion be listened to. It's nice.
And how much of your experience outside of modeling how much would you bring into modeling? Because you do a lot of stuff outside of modeling. For instance, your beliefs and, just helping people heal and grow. That's something that you are very much involved with, which we might not necessarily see in the industry specifically as being, oh, you know what, this is something that is important as well, which it is. So how much do you think you bring into when you're working as well?
Well, for me personally, I bring that type of mindset into every interaction I have inside the studio and outside of the studio. So a lot goes on behind the scenes that are never revealed. And I go to every job praying that I will say exactly what needs to be said to whomever I'm speaking to in ways that I have no idea. And to me, that is the value of my job. The interactions with people, the conversations, people open up to me and share their heart with me. You get kind of up close and personal with a makeup artist or who's right there in your face, or the stylist that's zipping you up. You're together all day in a very close, intimate way. And so conversations develop. And this is where I hope to help. It's not so much the end product. Of course, I want to deliver a beautiful picture and work as a team to come to the perfect end product that we're working towards, which is fine photography and great marketing. But those connections with the people behind the photograph is what is so enriching for me.
Wow, yeah, that's true. Without people, I mean, what's the point of it all?
Right. And we can give to each other in more ways than one.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, you think of today's world as being so polarized in many ways and, increasingly so. But then the point is we are here to build each other up, to help each other. And if we don't do that, then are we even human for that matter? Uh, you know. So,
Absolutely.
so in terms of the connections that you build or even conversations that you have, very often, this has just been my limited experience from things that, or people that I have met, at least in the industry, when it comes to advertising and things like that. Lots of conversations are very superficial, especially with regards, and I don't know if this is something that you've experienced, but if it's a younger person that we're talking to, we're more talking about, oh, looks and, maybe past work, things like that. But if it's an older person that we're talking to, generally we start talking about life and philosophy and all of these things. Have you experienced that, or maybe have you experienced a shift in conversations over time?
Wow, that's a very general question. To answer that generally, I think younger people have this type of joie de vivre and energy and excitement about life that gets more seasoned as you get older. And as you get older, you want to talk about things that have more depth because that's just the way it is. And younger people like to talk about silly things more often. And that's fine. That's, imbued with energy that can uplift everybody. And it's okay to be silly and talk about things that are trite. That's all right. I mean, that's perfect for them at that age. I did that too. I'm sure you did that too as a younger man. And we all have these perfect categories in life that we must live through. And I think as we age, we need to let them go as we move to another category in life, a more mature category. And part of the culture tries to hold on to what was. And that's to our detriment, because each category in life has beautiful opportunities to experience. For instance, if you're a single person, you get married, you have a child, you have to give up that freedom. But you gain the wisdom of knowing what love is by having a child. So it's a give and take. You get rid of something and the universe fills it with something new. And if our culture could just allow that transition to happen naturally, I think there'd be a lot more mental health in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the conversations that topics that we were talking about was, in terms of milestones. Very often, you're like, I have to finish college by 17. I have to get married before I'm 30. I have to own a house, so and so. And what you just said, it should happen naturally. It's not about forcing things to happen there. Were there milestones that maybe you experienced or you that were forced on you, for instance, based on your age, saying, at this age, you've got to achieve this or do this, for instance?
Well, in context of this conversation in the fashion industry, yes, when I was early 30s, I had my first child. So I mentally had a whole different definition of who I was. All of a sudden, I'm just not a woman, I'm a mother as well. That's another title. And my responsibility shot up. And I had to redefine myself and being responsible for this new human being. Okay. In the industry, however, I was in that weird age. I didn't look young, but I didn't look old, according to the industry. So I was in this strange flux, like how could clients categorize me? Where did I fit? And so, yes, that was put onto me. I still looked the same, but I think maybe my attitude changed about how I presented myself to the world because I had this new self-identity. And it was this odd period of not being young enough, not being old enough that the industry put on me. And I waited it through, and then I was into the older category, naturally. It was a weird few years, though. But that was okay. They gave me more time to dedicate to raising my infant, so it all worked out. But that is one instance that comes to mind to answer your question.
And what about personally? Did you have any goals that you'd set for yourself? With like, this is the age that I have to reach a certain goal, for instance, in life?
Well, after, loving the industry and the variety it offered, as an older woman, I then had 2 children and a mortgage, and I did not like not knowing when that phone would ring. So I wanted to have more, I guess, control over security. So, pardon me. I decided to then open the consulting business that I had for 10 years, which was more, it allowed me that peace of knowing more finances that would come on a regular basis. And I could also model at the same time. So yeah, I felt like I just needed to not be at the mercy of clients calling me at their whim. I needed to have more structure and more, having that mortgage and the children, I needed to be more responsible. So yeah, I kind of grew up and started my own business. Even though modeling, you're your own, you're self-employed and it is your own business. It was time. It was time to do that. Yeah.
And how did you deal with this? Is of course personal curiosity also, because you said you don't know when the phone's going to ring next, and that's a lot of uncertainty. How did you deal with that? And did you, being young at the time, also help with a lot of that, or has that maybe right now you think maybe if I go back, I should not have worried so much about it?
Yeah, isn't that good advice for everybody? Don't worry about it so much. Things will work out. It's okay.
Yeah, I think the lockdown has really taught us that.
I think so too. And how much do we really need? What is important? Let's get our priorities straight. Sure, over the years, there were times that were tighter and stressful, but I made it through and it all worked out.
Wow. Just one thing I wanted to touch upon, the color of your hair, if that's okay.
Sure.
You mentioned in your 30s is when you actually embraced it. And you said, also when you did your first shoot with the current color that you're rocking, what made you take that jump and be like, no, I'm going in for it. It doesn't matter what the industry thinks at this point.
What made me do that?
Yeah.
I could not stand paying someone to pour chemicals onto my head every 3 weeks. I mean, that just for me made no sense. It was toxic for my health, toxic for Mother Earth. I mean, all those chemicals go down the drain. what happens to it? And why was I doing that? I, I wanted to be authentic and be my real self and not hide behind what I thought I should have been looking like. I wanted to look like myself. And nature, I think, knows the best colors for you. You know, when you age, the skin gets more wrinkly, and so the whiter hair also softens the wrinkles, and it brings out your eye color more. So it's this, you know, beautiful transition that nature gives you if you just allow it. And then I loved saving all the money.
But you also mentioned that there was no demand as such at the time, whereas today there would be maybe a few calls, for instance, for people with gray hair. So that's definitely something that has changed. But was that difficult for you at the time? Maybe was that a worry? Maybe, okay, you know, this is who I really am. This is me being true to myself, and also, of course, beneficial for life itself. But what about the future now?
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but at the time it was just something I had to do, and I knew I was putting my career in jeopardy because that was 20 years ago, and 20 years ago it was not a thing. You could not go to the hair salon and have your hair dyed gray like you can today. You couldn't go to the store and buy a box like young girls like to do and make their hair gray. It was not a thing at all. So my agent, bless her heart, said, listen, why don't we just take a few pictures and just see? And I thought she was going to waste my time. I thought, why even bother? I had to cut off all my hair to let it grow in. That's what I did. I didn't gradually grow it. I just chopped off the old, dyed, unhealthy hair. So I had a totally new look. And so I took her advice and took a few pictures. And I actually ended up working more in the United States with gray hair than I did in the United States with dark hair. And it, you know, the rest is history. It's just, I mean, the industry has boomed for gray hair.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation with Rebecca Valentine. She runs Grey Model Agency in the UK, which is UK's only agency for people with for older models. You know, and she was saying the same thing. It's interesting to see how things have society or the industry has also been more accepting of people that way. But since you mentioned that you ended up working more with gray hair in the US than you had before, and you also have traveled, have you seen differences in countries that you visited, or different cultures, for instance, as to how they accept you for who you are, in terms of not just age, but also hair color, for that matter?
Oh yeah, I think, you know, I lived in Europe for 10 years, and I feel that the Europeans have a more acceptance of women being natural. They have a lot of magazines where they are dedicated to women 50 or 40 years and older, and they do not Photoshop them. And these magazines are extremely successful. You know, it's very nice for a woman to open a magazine and see somebody that looks like her. And they understand that. Here in America, it's a little bit different. We aren't quite as accepting, but it is changing. You know, you have Jane Fonda, you have Lauren Hutton, you have Helen Mirren, and these women are regarded as beauties, and they're all past 70. And there are more women that are now just saying, yeah, this is who I am, this is how I look, and it's okay. I look pretty good, and I'm still rocking it. I'm still busy. So fortunately, we're kind of headed in the way that Europe was back then. I mean, we might be behind in that area, but we're gaining. We're catching up with them.
Would there be, I mean, I'm not very familiar with Europe, but would there be maybe possible reasons why Europe was ahead in that sense, and perhaps even for us in India also, and Asia are still lagging behind in that sense?
Oh, good question. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe the first thing that came to mind was health. The Europeans, you know, they eat well, they dine, they rest, they vacation in a longer spells than in America. Here we'll hurry with our food, we'll skip meals, we don't sleep enough, our vacations are too short, and that has to do with our health. It takes a toll on our health. Europeans age more gracefully. They're more at peace with who they are. So they don't, you know, go to the doctors to get the surgery like Americans do. And it could be based on how they approach life. It's a bit more healthy and natural.
So it is all about the mindset, not.
Big time. Oh yeah.
So in terms of the mindset, because I've watched a few of your videos, and this is something that you really touch upon, even with growing older. So who defines when you're too old? And I noticed in one of your Q&A, somebody had mentioned, do you feel too old? And you said, define old. That was just your response. And so in that sense, because a lot of times we are told, this is what is old and this is what is young. How do we get past that, do you think? Especially in an industry that does definitely define young, old that way.
I grew up with two sisters, and when we were children, we fantasized what it would be like to be older. And we thought, oh my gosh, when we're 21, oh, can you imagine we'll be so old when we're 21? And now I'm way past that. And I still feel young. And yet, what does that mean? How do you get past it? I guess, don't buy into it. Don't listen to definitions that tell you you're something other than you are. I feel a lot younger than what people think this age is. And when I look back as a child and I thought 21 was old, you realize your perceptions of things are incorrect. And I hope to let other women know that as you age, it doesn't mean that you are what society says. You can still be relevant. You can still be vibrant. You can still contribute. You can still have a full life. Even if what society says is old, it's like the soul has no age to it. And we are all souls and spirits. So if you want to start something new, a new chapter in life, and you're 80, you can do that. Doesn't mean that there's nothing new to learn. There is always more to learn and always more to give.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you've heard of Dilys Price. She held the record for being the oldest female skydiver in her 80s, right? And she started skydiving only after she was 50. Sadly, she passed away last month, but I mean, that's an incredible story. She just decided, I'm going to do this. I want to do it. And it doesn't matter that I'm 50, who cares? You think of skydiving and be like, oh no, this is a young person's sport. And you're like, nope. And she didn't just do it once or twice. She did over 1,000 jumps. And that's an incredible
Wow.
thing. That just goes to show, it's just about the mindset. It's not about allowing society to define and put you in a little box and say, nope, you're beyond 50. That's it for you.
And it's not only the society, it's also that ego mind that is in there saying, no, I shouldn't, no, I can't, no, that I'd make a fool of myself. So it's what we tell ourselves as well that we have to watch out for and not believe it all the time. If your heart says, I want to do that, I want to start painting, then do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I think that's brilliant advice. Would you also be able to touch upon maybe age-related barriers that people might face, as not just as they grow older, but across age groups? Because I think you're someone who has had more experiences than a lot of us when it comes to, since you've been in the industry, traveled the world. I'd love to get your perspective on that.
On age-related changes in the industry?
No, just age-related barriers that people might face.
Yes. Well, we've got cultural barriers, we've got cyclical barriers, and we've got the changing barriers. And what I mean by that is the changing barriers are the self-imposed societal barriers that, like we were just talking about, you have to be at a certain place, at a certain time in your life, and at a certain age, it's over. Those, fortunately, are changing. And they're almost cyclical also. That's the other point about barriers. Because, for example, if we wait long enough, things will come around, things change. History does repeat itself, as we've all heard, but more succinctly, what I'm talking about are, in my own experience in the industry as a model, let's say about 15, 20 years ago, fillers, everyone was getting fillers. I was being offered several jobs with, 6 figures to be injected and to show the results. And I refused those jobs. That wasn't along with my ethics. I didn't want to do that for that, even for that large amount of money. And now we have clients that are asking for women that have had no fillers, because that change is swinging back. And that's one of the things, but I mean about a cyclical barrier that's changing. If you wait long enough, you know, it's like a trend. It just changes. It's not set in stone. And then you've got the cultural barriers, which are different. Like in LA, you know, they want you tan and they want you toned and they want you tight. And yet in Hamburg, where I lived, they love women that are robust and real and raw. Or then you go to the African tribe, in the Belly tribe, where the women wear all those metal necklaces, and you know, that's what they define as beautiful, and that's what they accept. So there are trends all over the world that vary, and I think that they do change if you have patience. You can also be the one that would help to create a new trend. Maybe I did with going gray 20 years ago when it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't even thought of as acceptable as someone who modeled. But with patience, perseverance, it's changed.
So we can all do a little part in actually breaking these barriers and in our own way, not
Yes.
realizing that, you know, 50 years down the line, it might be a huge movement for all we know.
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of us don't realize is, you know, it just takes one person to start the process, and then everybody, as long as you join together. I also like you touched upon different cultures and how they look at beauty as well. Could I ask you, how would you define beauty?
I define beauty as energy, and the energy that just pours out of a person and then affects the people that sees you. You know, beauty is meant to uplift. Nature, when you have a perfect flower at its pristine point of being unfurled and fragrant, and it's just at its perfection, it uplifts us on some level. And a person's beauty, not the body, but the spiritual beauty of a person, can uplift whoever they come in contact with. And we all know what that feels like when you just engage with someone and you left feeling better than when you saw them. And that's beautiful, that kind of upliftment, that engagement where you just feel better than before.
Speaking of that, do you, like, also just referring to another video that you had made on stereotypes based on age, and you listed a lot of things, and those are very true even for, I mean, across cultures. I think a lot of those things. What about, have you come across stereotypes that people have labeled you under, for instance, and maybe where do they come from? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, stereotypes. Older people think about retirement, think about medication, think about, you had said it in your email to me, you know, cruise ships, right? Yeah. And that's a stereotype, because not all older people want to go on cruises. And again, it's the mindset. As you get older, I think we need to have a view to define older people as being vibrant in the ad industry, older people that like literature and the arts and volunteering. Personally, I was in Vogue 3 times this year, and it wasn't for all those stereotypical things. It was actually being interviewed for my opinion about fashion, kind of like what we're talking about in the industry. So that was breaking down a stereotype of Vogue, you know, kudos to them. And yet in America alone, 50% of the people that are 50 years and older have the most disposable money. So of course the marketers are going to give them what they think they can sell them, which are the cruise ships and the medication. But I don't think that that's a true representation of the older people, you know, that is too stereotypical. We have more vibrancy in our lives than just thinking about aches and pains and sagging skin.
Absolutely. Just a quick plug for your videos. If definitely go and watch Roxanne's videos on age-related stereotypes, as well as on age-appropriate clothing, because I think what you say there is really profound, and I think all of us, regardless of what our age is, regardless of who we are, really need to hear that. So definitely listen to that.
Thank you.
Just getting to a little personal in terms of you, and have you come across anyone who, or any assumptions that people have made about you based on your age, or has that not been something that you've experienced?
Generally, I have not experienced that, which has been wonderful. So no, nothing comes to mind.
Well, that's great to hear. At least, I mean, that's positive, you know. I think that proves that change is happening, and it is happening in a positive way. That's good.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah. I think you're doing a lot in terms of in breaking those barriers. And I just wanted to know if you had to list maybe top three or top five stereotypes or biases, age-based biases that you hope would just be done away with, what would those be?
I think I can only speak about the women, right? Stereotypes placed on women. And that would be that we have to look other than how we naturally look. Now, I'm not somebody who says every woman has to be natural. If they want to have a nose job, or if they want to have red hair, pink hair, dye their hair, fine. I want them to feel good with how they are. And I think the stereotype is that women have to look a certain way in order to feel good about themselves. And for some reason, women have bought into that lie. And it stems with self-esteem and self-confidence. Women need to build their confidence about feeling happy with what they've been given in life. This is who I am, they need to say. And they need to present it to the world with confidence. And what is more beautiful than a confident woman? Let's see. So I think women need to get over that and not follow the stereotype of how they have to look or how they have to dress, because sometimes that certain piece of clothing can make a woman feel really good, and yet she won't wear it because she might feel she'll be laughed at. So maybe that's another thing, is not to, you know, be shocked when a woman shows up different than how we think she should look. You know, we need to be less judgmental and allow women to express themselves. And women have so much to offer. They need to find their voice and support each other. I think that's the other misconception, that women are catty and talk behind their backs and, you know, compete. And that is not what I find. I feel women are sisterly and supportive and want to build each other up. I find that a lot on social media and also in the studios. So that would be another one.
That's beautiful. So how did being a mother change things for you? Because
I don't know. It's the only thing I've done. So I don't know what it would have been other. This is it. Maybe, let's get more specific. What do you mean exactly?
No, you said you had your first child when you were in your 30s, right?
Yes.
So before that, you were modeling way before that, and you continued modeling after that as well. So how is that a new role, a new responsibility? How has that changed you, or how has that shaped your life, for that matter?
Sure. If I didn't have children, I would have lived in New York, in a big city, but I didn't want to raise my children in the big city. I wanted them closer to nature. So I moved to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, to Boulder, and that's where I raised my children. And that wasn't a fashion capital of the world, as you can imagine. So I lost out on a lot of jobs, but that was okay, because being a mother was my first job, and I felt I only had one chance. So I did it the best I could, and I put modeling on the back burner, so to speak. But I was able to keep my head above water, and I would just take planes to work. And but that would have been the difference. I would have stayed in New York if I had not become a mother.
I'll tell you why I'm asking that is because one of our topics that we covered when we were talking about gender was also about women, and how there's so much pressure, like especially for mothers. You have to do so many things, and I mean, naturally as well, you have so many responsibilities, which a lot of people don't necessarily realize, and which is why I just wanted to know your take on it, because as someone who has traveled the world a lot and who has very frankly been at
Right.
the top of your game for a long time, uh,
Thank you.
that must have been difficult, in many ways challenging as well, which is why I
That's
wanted to know.
That's a really good point to bring up. Thank you. That was one of the things I taught in my school. I felt that I could teach young girls that there's a lot of self-reliance that has to be developed in this industry if they wanted to be a model. But it's also something they could take with them, no matter what job they were going to go into, because you need to have a certain discipline if you're to model, because you need to be disciplined with your diet and to keep your body tip-top shape and your skin glowing. You need to have your muscles toned, so you need to have a regular workout routine. You need to show up on time and get yourself from A to B, and know where you're going, and to bring with you what it is you need. So nobody's watching you or helping you. You're very self-reliant. Your agent will give you a list, but you need to be the one that puts all this into action, and you need to be on time for the plane, for that call in the morning. You need to be where you need to be. Some people just don't have that discipline for all of those categories. You need to keep your hair and nails, all of that, in tip-top shape. So it isn't for everybody. Some people just don't want to keep up on that. And if you're young, fortunately, you typically have a beautiful, healthy body. But as you age, you really need to be disciplined to keep yourself fit and healthy, and to have the energy. This business takes a lot of energy to show up and always project that that happiness, that smile. It's taxing. So you have to be disciplined in order to be on top of your game.
So your experiences of ageism, would they have been, do you think it would have been different if you were of a different gender, or maybe it hasn't been influenced by the fact that you are a woman, for instance?
Sure. We all know that women are given so much more of a hard time with how they age, how they look, how they shouldn't age. It's a tremendous burden that we've all accepted. And what for? Because we want to be appealing to the opposite sex. It's just kind of strange. And yet not all men want women to be young and perky. They enjoy a mature woman. So that's strange too, to lay that on men, to think that that's all that they want, or to think that in advertising all they want to see is youth. Mind you, youth is beautiful, no question about it. Yet there is a certain beauty to a seasoned person, someone that has character on their face. There's a certain beauty that's not man-made. So it's captivating. Like, oh, look at how that person turned out. Look at those lines. Look at that expression that person has developed and their life experiences has given them. It's captivating in its own way. Youth is beautiful because it's just like a clean slate, and you look at the proportions and it's just magnificent in its beauty. But then so can age with personal expression be just as captivating and beautiful.
I just want to touch on one more thing in terms of presentation of age, because we did touch upon how it's not necessary that all old people are into cruises and they're only thinking about retirement and things like that. But in the industry also, do you find there's a bit of tokenism when it comes to age related models as well? Like we have to have somebody an older model, for instance, just to show that we are inclusive of age, or even to sometimes even fetishizing age very often, which is the other extreme.
To do what with the age also? What was the second?
Looking at it from a fetish perspective, like, the end. So what's your take on it? Because I find this a little intriguing, but it's also taking it slightly to the extreme in many ways, rather than finding that balance.
Well, I think I remember in the 80s, when I still had the dark hair and I was modeling quite a lot, they would have that token gray-haired model hired. And I remember that distinctly because it was a new trend. However, she would be out of focus in the background. And she would just be hired for like a half a day, just for a few hours. And I kind of felt sorry for her because, she just was there as this symbol, and it didn't really matter who she was. They just needed her there to fill that category of a gray-haired model. And then, a decade or two later, then I became that model where I would be hired for that token gray-haired niche, and I would be out of focus. And, you kind of shrug and say, well, at least I got, a job. But it has changed, and of course now I am front and center and I get booked often. So kudos to those companies that have decided to showcase the older woman, and they get complimented by their clientele constantly, at least what I read on social media. Oh, we're so happy to see older models, And if they are the type that just do it as a fetish or just as, again, just the token, well, kudos to them as well. At least they are making that effort. At least they are trying to get on that new trend, which hopefully will just be the norm. There is still that transition because we also have the plus size models that a lot of companies are starting to embrace. We have the LGBTQ division that companies are embracing. So, we need to be patient. Many of us just want it to be like now. And there are still people that are catching up. So at least it's headed in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right in that representation also does matter, because if I don't relate to someone I'm seeing maybe on the pages of a magazine, I don't connect with it at all. So what's the point in that case? I'm sorry, I'm name dropping one more person if that's okay. But do you know Kathy Jacobs? She modeled for Sports Illustrated after she was 50 for the first time. She got into modeling after she was 50 and then also modeled there. And she said, she got a lot of messages from people, especially saying, my mother, I know my mother is beautiful, but my mother doesn't see it that way because society has told her she's too old to be beautiful. And then now you come along, and then now my mother is also inspired by all of that. What's the response been like for you in that sense?
People are inspired by my age, and people are inspired that I've gone natural. And it's, for me, I've been doing this for 20 years, right? So I'm so happy to see that it's really catching on. And women are starting to be more bold, and they are becoming less placent. They are becoming more active in their own definitions of who they are. And that's a beautiful thing. So I'm very happy that I can inspire women. I actually have men come up to me and they say, I wish my wife would go gray. I can't tell her. She's always dyeing her hair, but I wish she would go gray. And there was another woman I read about who did a test, and she went on those dating apps and she took a picture of her with the dark hair, and then she did a photoshopped picture of her with gray hair, and it was the same picture, just different hair color. Well, guess which one got more hits? The gray-haired one. So I think that shows that even the opposite sex is liking to see women more natural as well. And it's just really a matter of time for it to become more mainstream and for marketers to start to make it be just the norm. I work very often with women half my age, and not to be their mother role, but to be just another model in the picture. And that's happening more and more. So that's a wonderful thing. That's a good trend. That's inspiring to the people that see the pictures as well, as I get the feedback hearing that.
Wow. I mean, yeah, even as a young person, you've been someone that inspired me to look at things differently, and just be like, this is not necessarily how things should be just because you've been told.
Good. It's us who decides how society is going to be in, and it's us who decides new trends, and it's us who break down barriers and stereotypes. And once we realize that, it's so freeing. Really, we really have more power than we give ourselves. And not that we're looking to be power hungry, but little actions can change in big ways.
True. You also mentioned in one of your comments, I don't remember which video it was, but in one of your comments you said, I think talking about it also helps because you're taking the next step into bringing positive change. And that's one of the reasons we love conversations like this, because in Spaces we have three pillars, right? One is listen, learn, and engage. So we talk to people about things and expect that, we need to listen. Like, for instance, I know a lot of people are going to listen to what you've said right now. And for me, just talking to you and also conversing by email and looking at the work that you put out has been an eye-opener in many ways, because I didn't know that this entire world existed. Because you told, no, wait, hang on, there can be no models over this age. Like, to be very frank, before this year, I didn't know that this was such a vibrant, that there is still people breaking these barriers and doing so much. And then suddenly I find one person, then I find another, then another, then another. I'm like, whoa, hold on, have I really been living? Like, it feels like a different world altogether, sometimes.
That's wonderful.
So one more thing, you also said that a lot of people have been influential in your own life, and you also have a lot of friends who influence you and inspire you as well. You mentioned Elon Musk's mother as one of them, because she also, I think she got cover girl when she was 72, if I'm not wrong. So how have people like her inspired you also to maybe grow in and do better?
Yeah, people like May Musk or the other women I mentioned keep me motivated to stay healthy and not give up, because there is still life, beyond 60 and 70 and even 80. I mean, look at Betty White, she's in her 90s. There's other women that I don't know their name, but I can think of how they started, like you mentioned, the skydiver. They start these hobbies late in life and excel, and they're really, older. And so I am inspired to realize I still have, hopefully, God willing, time, a lot of time, maybe a few more decades even if I don't have a few more decades, let's say I have one more day to live, why not feel the best I can? That means to me to watch what I eat and to make sure I move my body and to get enough rest. Those are really simple things you've all heard so many times, but they are vital as you get older, because your body doesn't repair as quickly. So everything you eat, is very, very important. And I learned that from May Musk, who is, the nutritionist. That's where her education lies. And I remember being with her and being impressed with, how strict she was with her own diet, because she knew she had reached her quota for the day and she wasn't going to have any more. And that takes discipline, especially when there's such wonderful food on sets and they have a buffet of just beautiful food that's delicious. And you have to know, you've reached your limit and you have to call it quits. So it takes a lot of discipline. So those women inspire me. Jane Fonda, with her activism, she's keeping involved with society. She knows what's happening on a global scale, and she's using her celebrity as a very powerful voice. And that's inspirational. So that's how they've inspired me to realize, keep myself in shape, keep my mind, body, and spirit in shape. Don't sleep in and think, oh, what's the use? Because as long as I'm here, there's things to do. There's ways to help. And of course, you got to help yourself first, because if you don't feel well, you're not going to be help to others.
Yeah, very true. Something for me to definitely remember as well. What have been the greatest lessons that you've learned as you've aged and over the years?
Wow, that's a big question.
Okay, maybe top three.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's what I had just mentioned. The keeping an eye on what you eat and listening to your body. Do I need to exercise? Do I need to rest? Or do I need to stretch? Do I need to meditate? What is my body telling me? My body is always signaling to me what is needed or what needs to be changed. And I think to fine tune that conversation you have with what your body's telling you is so beneficial, and to not ignore it, and to look at as a sign of something that's helpful rather than a concern. Like, if you have a backache and don't take the aspirin, just go stretch your back, as an example. So that's what I've learned, to really listen to your body, because that's what's going to carry you through your life. And it's your vessel that is your friend, and you just need to have this symbiosis with this. You need to understand it, and so that's important. And you do that through what you eat. You need to learn what works for your body. Some people can eat meat, some people can't. And then also for your spirit, your mind, what makes you healthy, what makes you happy. That's vital as well.
True. This might be random, but if you could go back in time to any particular age, what age would that be, or why would you or would you not want to do that?
Well, I remember being 10. It was so innocent, and I was such a happy child. I laughed. I loved skipping. I loved to climb trees. I loved to sing, and I wore my sister's clothes, so they were hand-me-downs, and it was fine. I wasn't concerned with how I looked. I just was loving how I felt. And it was a beautiful thing. Back then, a 10-year-old had just this childish freedom, which is a wonderful spirit. And I would love to feel that again.
Would you give yourself any advice if you could go back and meet your 10-year-old self?
Oh, probably what I said to you earlier. Don't worry so much. It'll work out. It'll be fine. Yeah.
And would you have any words of advice for not just people into modeling or in the industry, but in general for women or otherwise, people who might feel burdened or pressured by age-based milestones that maybe society is putting on them, or because it's so ingrained in us? Any advice on how we could perhaps go beyond that?
Listening to our own hearts is our best GPS system, and it never steers you wrong. It's always there to help, and all we need to do is listen to it. So I think listening to your heart is my advice. It kind of ends all that chatter that's out there and all the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, and just, what feels right to you is, I think, a great way to direct your life for your ultimate happiness.
And one more thing, if for people like me, people like us who consume a lot of content, given so much in social media and wherever else, how could we work towards age positivity and helping others also grace agefully? This includes our own family members who might never be online, for that matter. Because I think a lot of us do struggle with this, because sometimes family members are bogged down by age, and then we're like, no, there's so much in you that we see, but it's difficult to talk sometimes.
That's a beautiful question. What just came across my vision when you said that is to focus less on a person's age and more on helping a person. Because that puts you present, that makes you present, like the person in front of you, what is it they need? And everyone has their own needs, regardless of their age. So that's how we can support one another, is to help the needs of the person in front of you. And that eliminates thinking, well, if they're 10, they need this. If they're 80, they need that, which might be true, but it might not be. Maybe what we think of each of them needs is the opposite. And you know what I mean? It just allows for a non-judgment on our part, to be present with the person you're with and to give them what they need. And that eliminates us looking through a filter of biases or stereotypes.
Wow. Yeah, I think it is important to note. A lot of us do have these biases, and we don't realize it very often. But
right.
It is important to look at the person for who they are, rather than what we are told, how we are told to look at them. That's very important. is there anything else you would like to add? Because I don't want to keep you for too long. I'm really sorry. I've already kept you for more than an hour. But if there's anything else you would like to add or tell us, that would be incredible.
Well, thank you for the great interview. I do have one more piece of advice that hopefully will help people create a world that they enjoy more. And that's to help them be aware, or to shine a light on what they do today, they become tomorrow. And that's powerful. That's powerful. Every step we take is leading us to our future. So it takes some thought. What is it that we are doing? What inspires us? How are we spending our time? What is the tomorrow that we want to create? Because what you do today will be your tomorrow. There's no getting around that. And that's rather profound. I think that we need to really understand the power we hold within our actions, and everything we do has an effect. So, you know, what you do today for yourself and for others will create our tomorrow. I hope that what we share today will help somebody somewhere. That's my whole purpose for living, is to help somebody somewhere with my words. I am at home mostly. I don't work that much anymore because I can't get to New York because of the quarantine. And I'm on social media a lot. And that's kind of how my own industry is changing. More online, more as opposed to in the studios. So I just want to, that's why I want to develop the YouTube channel, my Instagram account, because I want to reach more people, because I'm older and people are asking me and wanting to hear my answer like never before. So if there is a platform for me to say my little piece and share my experiences, may it help somebody.
I think everyone needs to listen to what you have to say, because for me, although I'm not even a model, and I still feel that's really helped me a lot and taught me a lot. So I will link those things to anyone, find them in the description, and also on our social media, we'll link that. And definitely go follow Roxanne and what she does and what she stands for, who she is. That's more important, I think. She is an inspiration, that just to say the least.